We're limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Senator Rohr.
In doing so, have taken over several apartment complexes.
Venezuelan gangs are taking over the real estate. They're becoming real estate developers. And they have...
Do they get little cards?
Their little card is a bullet.
Yes!
Kamala Harris will work to deliver on that and secure the border.
Who's to blame? Carousel, if you will, continues. The city says the property management team is simply not doing enough to help these residents. In an interview with that property management team last week, they say that that building is actually being controlled by a certain gang, and they feel helpless. There's nothing they can do about it.
They've, in fact, have kind of pushed out the property management through intimidation and then collected the rents. And arrests have been made, but these operations are still ongoing.
JD Vance is back, torching liberal reporters once again. As you saw from the intro, that was, I believe, ABC host. I forgot the lady's name, but you saw how she tried to minimize the migrant issue. And I think strategies like this, like, it's so blatantly obvious that the media is for and behind Kamala Harris, and it's starting to get annoying that many people try to minimize the migration issue and how it's so much. It's so taxing on the taxpayer dime, and then we're pretending that we're voting for the best interests of our country. No, you're voting the best interests of a party that cares nothing about the American people. And you saw that liberal reporter, because at the end of the day, you see this graph. It does not affect rich people because rich people live in gated communities. I give you my prime example, my best example. Stephen Curry, who plays for the Golden State Warriors. There was a big story that they was going to put an affordable housing zone or development near his neighborhood, and he outwardly spoke against it, criticized it. No one calls him a hypocrite. And this is how many of these liberals operate in real life. And this is the problem. This is the stark difference between conservatives and Democrats. Conservatives will tell you should live like this. You should want to be rich. You should want to be in a married household. You should have a father in the home. And this is the stark difference. Our government should put Americans first. And look at the results. Look at it. That's how many illegal alien getaways happened under the Biden and Harris administration. Now you see the numbers are plummeting because now they want to do their job in 2024, buzzer beater time. And then they want to pretend they're doing their job. And instead of recognizing the problem, hey, you know, this is not a good look, the media want to call you a racist because you notice. Every time the media calls it racist to oppose mass migration, a swing voter dies and a Trump voter is born. I promise you that is the correct assessment of this. And you see some of it in the polls. Let's check out this quick clip.
I mean, the reality is that for the first time in 32 years in this poll, it shows that Republicans are beating Democrats straight up. When you ask people a generic ballot in 32 years, it shows that Donald Trump's doing better with black voters, Hispanic voters, off the charts. But what the most important thing is, what happened last week is that what was working with female voters with Kamala Harris was that there was some feeling of joy in the air. Well, that joy is gone. She had a terrible week. She picked a pointless fight with Ron DeSantis. She was losing in the Sun Belt, and she tried to recover by going on The View, which a lot of women watch. She went on The View. You talked about it earlier. And she wanted to clarify the two most important issues that are facing these two candidates, the economy and immigration. And she bombed like Rory at the U.S. Open, and she went out there and said there was nothing she would do that would be different than Joe Biden. And she created a campaign commercial for Donald Trump. And so she's trying to recover. There is no joy here. And everybody knows it. And it's obvious that there is a leak in the balloon here in the Kamala Harris campaign.
And this is what's happening. Majority of Americans believe in mass deportation because we spend a lot of money. You want to know how much money we spend? Remember when $5 billion for a wall was too expensive? Look at this. United States taxpayer paid $451 billion per year for housing and care of illegal migrants. Illegal migrants, majority of illegal migrants are on Social Security, not Social Security, sorry. I don't know, but I can't verify that. But I know for sure they're on government programs, government benefits, they're on welfare. That's what I'm trying to say. Majority of illegal migrants are on welfare. Make it make sense, right? And year over year, this is a consistent cost. While building a border wall we would have paid it one time that year, and it would have been good for us the rest as long as we maintain it. But somehow, Democrats are able to justify year over year maintaining this expenditure. And if a majority of Americans get what they want, and we mass deport many of these illegal immigrants over time, we'll be saving. That's how much money we'll be saving. We can cut that in half, $250 billion. And we wonder why why the deficit's so high. Because government finds ways to spend money. And illegal immigrants, and this is how I see it, is a way for them to spend money. And it's completely baffling to me that many Americans don't see the play here. Democrats benefit from illegal immigrants because they think, these people are going to vote for us. They can easily replace the black vote. Right? Black people are aborting their babies 40% of the time. We can't rely on the black vote. So what the Democratic strategy is, replace them. Solidify our control. Make it make sense. But J.D. Vance come out and he pointed out a problem. Hey, this should not be happening in our state. It only happens in a handful of states. It don't matter. That handful of states shows the possibility that this could be a bigger problem if we don't nip it in the bud right now. And this has been the biggest talking point against a lot of this dumb stuff that the Democratic Party like to do is that, hey, when conservatives try to prevent a problem from becoming a problem, people minimize it and say, no, it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to be a big deal. Oh, you're exaggerating. No one's putting tampons in men's bathrooms. What are you talking about? 2 years later, now now we're reacting to it. Oh my God, they're putting tampons in men's bathrooms, in boys' bathrooms in high school. Yeah, we try to prevent it from going too far, but the liberals kept minimizing the problem. And this is exactly the same playbook I see with mass migration. The immigration issue, the border issue. Democrats, liberals are doing the same ish they did 5 years ago. Y'all didn't learn y'all lesson, liberals? And this is why I give liberals I have such a negative interpretation of liberals. Because I see what they were saying 5 years ago. Bill Maher, that's not happening. People don't think men can menstruate. 5 years later, look what we're talking about now. We're fighting against men who pretend to be women and trying to make the world convince them that they're women. Make it make sense. Now they want to play in the same sports as women. Make it make sense. And then they're going to be offended because you burst their self-deluded bubble. And J.D. Vance is going to highlight this stark difference. This is the New York Times reporter that he's going to kind of get in a conversation, and then I'll react to it along with you guys. So let's take a look.
The reason that there is a housing crisis is that not enough houses have been built.
And that we have 25 million people who shouldn't be here.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
I think it's both.
I know you do. I don't think that many people who look into this agree with you, but about a third of the construction.
Already messing up right there. Right? If you look at polls, the majority of Americans believe this. 54% said, hey, we believe in mass deportation. Now, she may be right. Yeah, there's a sizable minority that don't believe in this stuff. But I'll bet you the sizable minority that don't believe in this stuff actually benefited from the loose border policies that we have today. I come from legal migrants, right? They had to wait years before they legally came into this country. And you're going to reward somebody who skipped the line? End of the day, we rewarding. This is what I'm talking about. Government don't produce solutions. they create incentives, and your incentives create the results. If you create an incentive where people who break your laws don't suffer any punishment or consequences for it, in fact, you reward people for breaking your laws, such as crossing the border illegally, and then you give them all these welfare benefits that they didn't pay a single dime into, and the taxpayer has to pay $451 billion per year to maintain illegals being on the system. You don't think Americans are going to have a problem with that?
Construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large portion are undocumented. So how do you propose to build all the housing necessary that we need in this country by removing all the people who are working in construction?
Well, I think it's a fair question because we know that back in the 1960s, when we had very low levels of illegal immigration, Americans didn't buy houses, didn't build houses, but of course they did. And I'm being sarcastic, of course, in service of a point, Lulu. The assumption that because a large number of home builders now are using undocumented labor, that's the only way to build homes, I think, again,
The country is much bigger.
a fundamental.
The need is much bigger.
I'm sorry, I keep pausing it every 30 seconds, but this lady, like, this is why liberal women get a bad rap in my eyes too, is that they have this perception, like this classist, like elitist type of attitude that these jobs are too are beneath Americans. And since these jobs are beneath Americans, undocumented immigrants should be doing these jobs. Like, imagine the classic, the elitist kind of tone that comes across, right? And I show you examples of how in a small town they deported 600 Hispanics, and those jobs immediately got filled by American workers. And this is the argument many conservatives bring about with this fake, false premise about this idea that, oh, Americans don't want to do these jobs. Americans don't want to do these jobs under a certain amount of money. And this is what she's kind of missing out of the argument. She has this false assumption. This is a false assumption. She got no data. It's just an attitude that she has that, oh, Americans don't want to do these jobs, so why not bring these migrants in so they could do these jobs? Essentially treating these illegal immigrants like slave labor. I mean, Democrats, you going back to your roots, huh? Democrats were the party of slavery, and now they're making undocumented immigrants the new peasant class, the new serf class, the new slave class here in America. Oh, they're going to do the jobs we don't want to do. I still remember that story in Boston, how this lady took in a Haitian immigrant in Boston. And she said, oh, she's been very helpful. She cooks for us. She cleans for us. And everyone was like, yo, this lady just bought a slave, essentially, for cheap labor. And I thought that we don't want people working under the minimum wage, but we know illegal, undocumented immigrants work under the minimum wage. So you're justifying this stuff now, Democrat, liberal? Talking out of two sides that are there, but I digress.
I mean, I'm not arguing in favor of illegal immigration. I'm asking how you would deal with the knock-on effect of your proposal to remove millions of people who work in a critical part of the economy.
Well, I think that what you would do is you would take, let's say, for example, the 7 million prime age men who have dropped out of the labor force, and you have a smaller number of women, but still millions of women prime age who have dropped out of the labor force. You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
To work in construction?
Of course you could.
I
So
mean,
long as you
the
put- so
unemployment
long
rate
as
is
you-
4.1%.
but
Most
the
people who
unemployment rate, Lulu, this is important.
But
The
most people who
unemployment-
don't work can't work in the regular economy. They're in the military, they're parents, they're sick, they're old. They might not want to work in construction.
The unemployment rate does not count labor force participation dropouts. And again, this is one of the really deranged things that I think illegal immigration does to our society, is it gets us in a mindset of saying we can only build houses with illegal immigrants when we have 7 million, just men, not even women, just men who have completely dropped out of the labor force. People say, well, Americans won't do those jobs. Americans won't do those jobs for below the table wages.
Exactly. And you see the liberal woman's attitude, like, construction? Yeah, because like this is why when you go to college teach you this entitlement. Like, no one's too good for a job. Like, if I needed a job and I only qualify for like being a janitor or being something else, I'll take what I can get as I work to make something else happen. And this is the entitlement. I think this is why I'm a heavy critic of this self-esteem culture that we live in today versus self-control. Self-control say, hey, these are my options. I have to pick amongst these options: construction, janitor work, whatever, because I have limited skills and these jobs are easy to break in. I'm able to feed myself. And as I'm doing that, hey, let me try to find time to do something else. Instead, all you heard from the liberal reporter was excuses. Oh, Americans might be too old, too sick. And that could be true, but that's not the truth for a majority of people who are on unemployment, on a lot of these government benefits. A lot of people on these government benefits aren't disabled, aren't old. A lot of these people are able-bodied individuals, able-bodied adults that are actually able to work, but they say, no, I'm too good for a construction job. That's why I'm still on unemployment. I'm too good for a janitor work. That's why I'm still on these government benefits, because these jobs don't pay enough to replace that. It's not worth it for me to get these jobs. And this is the point that Vance is making, is that if we make these jobs worth it for Americans, they'll take these jobs. As my example that I showed out, after you deport a lot of these illegal immigrants, these companies have to actually bring up a competitive offer to attract Americans to do these jobs. And I think this is one of the specifics where I am in agreement with some government regulation, that the government has to serve the interests of its people that elected them. And in the interest of Americans, hey, if Americans are getting undercut by illegal immigrants working in these jobs, then the government should step in and add some type of incentive structure where it'll make it more cheaper and better for the companies to hire Americans than illegal immigrants. And this is why inflation is such a big problem. This is why when Donald Trump talked about how the illegals are taking black jobs, construction, sorry. I mean, I grew up in Miami where they've been trying to build Palmetto for years now. They're still working on Palmetto. A lot of black men take those jobs, especially young black men. That's how they usually get their money. This is how they usually afford their chargers and all this stuff. I know the hustle. Dudes will do construction in the day, in the mornings, and they'll do something else at night. And this is how these dudes be affording these Hellcats, but they live in the hood. They drive in Maseratis. At least that's how some people I know did it. They work constructions. And hearing that illegals are taking over these jobs, you don't think that's a threat to black men? You don't think that's a threat to working class men who have limited skills and they're just trying to make ends meet until they figure stuff out? You don't think that's a threat to their unemployment numbers? And these liberals try to project that this is a good thing. No, it's not. And you wonder why young men are voting for Donald Trump. You wonder why there's a sentiment growing amongst minorities that are supporting Trump. Because we understand the Democratic Party only cares about themselves. The illegal immigrants are merely a means to an end, a means to justify government spending, a means to solidify their government control, a means to empower their voters. Because remember, we go by, the electoral college goes by the population numbers. And the bigger our population is, the more electoral college votes that state gets. And a lot of these sanctuary cities are in these blue liberal states. So that means you're trying to give more electoral power to the Democratic Party by counting the illegals into the census. And then when Republicans try to pass laws to saying, hey, we should only count Americans as part of our census because only Americans can vote, Democrats unanimously vote against it. Make it make sense. Your action proves what your real motives are, Democrats. And like I always say on this channel, the simple answer is the clearest answer. I digress. Let's continue.
They won't do those jobs for non-living wages, but people will do those jobs. They will just do those jobs at certain wages. And think about this from the perspective of an American company, okay? I want them to go searching in their own country for their own citizens. Sometimes people who may be struggling with addiction or trauma, get them re-engaged in American society. We cannot have an entire American business community that is giving up on American workers and then importing millions of illegal laborers.
Agree.
That is what we have thanks to Kamala Harris's border policies. I think it's one of the biggest drivers of inequality. It's one of the biggest reasons why we have millions of people who have dropped out of the labor force. Why try to re-engage an American citizen in a good job if you can just import somebody from Central America who's going to work under the table for poverty wages? It is a disgrace, and it has led to the evisceration of the American middle class.
And you heard that. Wow. Incinerated that narrative. Imagine that. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Look at the incentives. If you put an incentive where, hey, you allow me to import cheaper labor into a country and I don't have to do any work marketing my jobs to the people in that country. Oh, okay. And you wonder why unemployment is so high in the Biden-Harris administration. You wonder why many Americans feel like they're hurt by Biden's border policies, by Biden's economic policies. Because these are the outcomes that they're produce. You allow these migrants to come in here and you don't think there's going to be an impact on the lives of the people in a town, district, country? I already showed you the economic costs. I already showed you how much it costs taxpayer dollars to house these illegals, give them these benefits to sustain themselves because they can't work. And if they can't work, it's not a livable wage, as we just pointed out in this interview. This is why JD Vance torches the media every single time on the illegal immigration point. And this is why Donald Trump is winning, because these are the two most important issues. I show you in the clips, one of the two most important issues in our election. And what Harris is running on? Abortion. Okay, but these handful of illegal migrants that are raping young women, assaulting women, attacking women. Like migrants have the lowest crime rates. It doesn't matter. They're actually committing crimes in New York. 75% of crimes are done by them. And they're being released. I showed you. Violent offenses by illegal immigrants. Most of them are released. So your numbers are, I can make the argument that your numbers are flawed. They don't fully capture the full picture of what's going on in this country. But this is what Democrats do to mental gymnastics their way out of an issue that is blatantly, practically against the interests of the American people. And you wonder why sentiments, why there's such a shift happening. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts about how JD Vance did on this interview. I think he did exceptionally well. I think he destroyed a lot of these false premises by these liberal reporters. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.